Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a really massive gap that exists right now in the tech landscape. We're talking about the gap between the glowing, almost sci-fi promise of the Internet of Things and the pretty harsh reality of actually dealing with all that data. Consider this for a second. Industry estimates are telling us that by the end of next year, IoT devices globally are going to generate roughly 73 zettabytes of data. Honestly, that is just a mind-boggling amount of information. We live in a world where literally everything is getting connected, right? From super high precision machinery on factory floors all the way down to the smart thermostat sitting in your living room. Devices are constantly talking. But here's the catch. What happens when billions of devices are talking all at exactly the same time? Well, you don't magically get immediate wisdom. What you get is an absolute avalanche of noise. So today we're going to look really closely at the mechanical and structural barriers to adopting big data analytics within IoT and exactly how organizations are desperately trying to turn all that overwhelming noise into a clear, actionable signal.
Now, this brings up a really common, honestly, very pervasive myth in the tech world today. We all kind of naturally assume that just plugging in a smart device instantly yields these amazing, actionable business insights. The logic usually goes something like, great, I've put sensors on my entire supply chain, so my business is now officially optimized. But let's actually ask the question, does simply having more data automatically mean you get better results? Well, the short answer, which is heavily backed by extensive industry research, is absolutely not. No way. In fact, it's a bit like trying to find a needle in a haystack by, adding 10 extra tons of hay. Without the right approach, throwing more data at the problem drastically lowers your signal-to-noise ratio. You just end up capturing thousands of mundane, completely useless data points that totally obscure the one or two critical anomalies you actually desperately need to see.
So the friction that a lot of organizations are feeling right now really just comes down to a clash of expectations. The idea we are all sold on is that massive data collection magically equals instant insights. You just hook up the shiny new hardware and watch the profits roll in, right? Well, the reality is that massive data actually creates massive analytical barriers. Think about what this raw data actually looks like in practice. It is definitely not a neat, organized Excel spreadsheet. We're talking about continuous, completely unstructured logs. It's a tiny sensor pinging a temperature reading every 10 milliseconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Traditional relational databases and those legacy analytics tools, they completely choke on this kind of velocity and variety. You are essentially trying to drink from a fire hose of unrefined big data. And instead of making your business operations clearer, this raw, unprocessed info can actually completely paralyze your decision-making systems. Let's move right along to Section 1, the IoT data explosion, and see how this data actually builds up inside everyday organizations. So the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is that possessing data and actually utilizing it are two entirely different things. And this disconnect, that is exactly what we define as the IoT big data hurdle. It represents the very significant barriers preventing organizations from fully realizing the potential benefits of massively increased data. And let's be clear, this isn't just some abstract conceptual wall. This hurdle is made of very real, very stubborn things. It's literally made of legacy software APIs that refuse to integrate with modern cloud platforms. It's made of astronomical cloud storage fees for data that, frankly, no one is even looking at. And perhaps the biggest issue? It's made of a severe lack of qualified data scientists who actually know how to build the algorithms required to make sense of all this noise. You can buy the most sophisticated sensor network in the world, but if you hit this hurdle, your multi-million-dollar investment is just completely trapped. Let's look at this quote for a second. The IoT will massively increase the amount of data available for analysis by all manner of organizations. I want to heavily emphasize that last part, all manner of organizations, because this is definitely not just some niche hurdle for the big tech giants out in Silicon Valley. Think about a modern hospital, right? You've got hundreds of patient monitors tracking 1,000 heartbeats every single second. Or think about a commercial smart farm tracking soil moisture and nitrogen levels across 5,000 acres. Or even a massive retail chain that's tracking the physical foot traffic of every single customer in every single aisle. The point is, this massive influx of raw data is coming straight for every single sector. It's a universal architectural challenge. Which leads us directly into Section 2, barriers to big data and the core challenges of IoT. Why exactly does this abundance of data create such major roadblocks? Well, the anatomy of this problem really plays out in 3 distinct phases. First up, you have the massive sudden wave of available data. It's the sheer velocity of it that catches companies completely off guard. Their network bandwidth just gets entirely overwhelmed by the constant, never-ending chatter of all these new devices. Second, we smash right into the structural barrier to analysis. Because this new data is so huge and so often unstructured, it just gets trapped in isolated data silos. Your manufacturing software literally can't talk to your logistics software, which means any kind of holistic big picture analysis is pretty much impossible. And of course, that leads directly to the third phase, the delayed realization of potential benefits. This is basically the chained up trophy. You've spent millions deploying all this hardware, but because you can't cross-reference the data, your return on investment is just delayed indefinitely. You're paying top dollar for the promise of the future, but you're completely stuck in the bottlenecks of the present. So how in the world do we fix this? How do we turn this mountain of raw, overwhelming data into tangible value? Let's check out Section 3, How Industries Are Responding. Making the transition from staring down these massive analytical hurdles to actually implementing countermeasures requires a complete architectural shift. Industries are simply refusing to be paralyzed by the sheer volume of data anymore, so they're deploying some really aggressive new strategies. A prime example of this is the major shift toward edge computing. See, instead of sending every single mundane temperature ping all the way up to a central cloud server, which by the way costs an absolute fortune in bandwidth and storage, companies are now putting miniature processors directly on the sensors themselves. So the device right at the edge uses lightweight AI to filter out all that noise for you. It only sends an alert to the cloud if, say, the temperature actually drops below freezing. This right here is exactly what it means to actively counter those analysis barriers. You are shifting from passively hoarding everything to aggressively filtering and analyzing the data at the exact moment it's created. It's a total game changer. And finally, we arrive at Section 4, Realizing the Full Potential. Let's look at what actually happens when an organization successfully navigates this entire transition. This sequence lays out the strict, non-negotiable progression of true IoT adoption, and it is incredibly important to understand this. You literally cannot skip straight to Step 3. Step 1 demands that you manage the massive data increase first. That means you have to upgrade your network bandwidth and totally rethink your storage architecture just to handle the raw volume coming in. Then, Step 2 requires the really hard work of actually implementing those countermeasures we talked about, like edge computing and cross-department data integration, just to break down those analytical silos. It's only after you do all of that heavy lifting that you get to reach Step 3, fully realizing the potential benefits. If you try to cheat and jump to Step 3 without building the infrastructure in Step 2, you do not get a smart, optimized business. You just get a really expensive, completely unmanageable data swap. It is a systematic journey, guys, definitely not a switch you can just flip. So as we wrap up, here's what you really need to take away from this. The sensors are already powered on. The data is already flowing across literally every industry on the globe. The barriers to analyzing that data are steep, for sure, but the competitive advantages are completely locked behind those exact barriers. So the big question isn't whether your organization will generate enough data in the future. The real question is, will you drown in the noise, or will you build the sophisticated infrastructure required to actually harness the signal? The reality of the IoT big data hurdle is already here, and how organizations answer that specific challenge today is absolutely going to define the winners and losers of the next decade of technology. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep digging into the data, and I'll catch you on the next one.